What's up, friends? So, the Pentecostal movement started in Topeka, Kansas. Remember that, Topeka, Kansas. That is where it started. And guess who it started by? A group of students, a group of college students, just like you and I, that they were given a project to prove how did you really know if you had the Holy Spirit. And so they went searching through the book of Acts, of course, and they found out that the only evidence that there is of having the Holy Spirit is through the evidence of speaking in tongues. Can you believe that students found that? Like college students, halfway out of high school, going into their adult years, basically found the Pentecostal movement. However, they were not necessarily the ones that grew it. Charles Fox was the first person to actually teach about speaking in tongues. And William Seymour, an African American pastor, was actually the pastor of, get this, the Azusa Street movement. Yes. In 1906, the Azusa Street began. And that was how the Pentecostal movement actually grew. People were gathering in tents from all around the world, all around the country, coming to figure out what this revival was. What was this big thing about speaking in tongues and this doctrine of having faith and sanctification and the rapture and all these things. People were trying to figure out what was this healing. People were becoming healed. People were speaking in tongues, and the Spirit of God was moving. But get this, don't forget that students, you and I, we basically started this. However, it was Charles Fox and William Seymour who grew it. They began preaching about it. They began having revivals and tent movements all around the world and all across the country. People came. And that is really cool to hear, because it's like, even though students started it, it was our elders that grew it. So it's kind of like backwards in a way. Like normally our elders would start something and then the students would maybe finish it and grow it. But in this case, it's like the students founded it, the students found the evidence, and it was the elders that grew the movement, that grew this Pentecostal movement all around the world. So that is really, really cool. So one thing that I would say that I really liked about learning about the Pentecostal movement and what it did for me is how it really revived my spirit about speaking in tongues and having that faith about miracles and the rapture, and just thinking about that my faith was just kind of regenerated in a way. Like it kind of rose up in me like a fire ignited in me, and about how so many over hundreds of years and over a course of years that founding fathers of Pentecostal, like Oral Roberts or other men of faith that basically helped grow this movement, it kind of just made me do more researching and kind of made me kind of ignite my spirit more on learning more about Pentecostalism and just the faith and the foundations of it. So I really did like learning the history of the Pentecostal movement, all that it did for this world, what it did for this nation, what it did for the charismatic movement. It was just really cool to hear about that. So one thing that I would say, that I wouldn't necessarily say that Christians necessarily have to have the Pentecostals' 5 major doctrines a part of their everyday life in a way. However, I do believe that speaking in tongues is evidence of the Holy Spirit. However, I don't necessarily believe that if you don't speak in tongues, you don't have the Holy Spirit. I was always taught that the Holy Spirit I was always taught that speaking in tongues enhances your relationship with God and enhances your relationship with the Holy Spirit. Because I know many people that are Christians that I believe truly do have a relationship with God, and they don't necessarily speak in tongues. So that is one thing that I would probably heavily speak on, is that you don't necessarily have to speak in tongues to have a relationship with God. However, I do believe that it does enhance your walk with Christ. It does enhance your spiritual life, and it does put you on different levels in your spiritual life. For me personally, that's my belief. And finally, one thing that I want to tell you about the Pentecostal movement, and one thing that I do not want you to forget, is that how it was started by students. It was started by students in a college, you and I, that were given a project. Who knows? One day a teacher may give us a project and it may start this whole revolution. It may start this whole movement. So I just want to encourage you that you never know what a project could do. You never know what a project could set an entire movement on. So I just want to encourage you with that, is that don't necessarily boo at your teacher's projects, because it may be a once in a lifetime chance to begin a movement. Peace.